Jabari stood outside the compound of Zainab's father, his heart beating so fast he thought it might burst from his chest. In his hands he held everything he had worked for: 3 healthy goats tied to a rope, a small bag containing 200 shillings in cash, and a letter he had asked the village teacher to write for him. His clothes were clean but worn, his shoes old and cracked at the edges. He had spent the entire morning making sure his appearance was as respectable as a poor farmer's son could make it. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Jabari had chosen this time carefully because he knew Kofi, Zainab's father, would be home from his trading business and would have time to listen. Kofi was a wealthy man, the wealthiest in Mombasa village in fact. He owned a successful trading post, several pieces of land, and everyone in the village respected him. But Jabari had heard stories that Kofi was also a fair man, a man who had once been poor himself before his hard work had brought him wealth. This thought gave Jabari courage. As Jabari approached the main house with its iron roof and painted walls, he felt small. The compound itself was impressive: fruit trees growing in straight lines, a large garden with vegetables, chickens walking freely around the yard. This was a house of prosperity, a house of comfort. Jabari's own home was just a simple mud house with a thatched roof that leaked when the heavy rains came. A young servant girl saw him standing at the gate and asked his business. Jabari's voice shook slightly as he explained that he had come to speak with Kofi on a very important matter. The girl looked at him with curiosity. A poor farmer's son did not often come to this house with such serious business, but she went inside to inform her master. Minutes later, Kofi emerged. He was a tall man with a broad chest and intelligent eyes. He looked at Jabari without speaking, waiting to hear what had brought him to his home. Jabari took a deep breath and began to speak. His words came out slowly at first, then with more confidence. He told Kofi about his family, about how his father had died when he was young and how he had worked since childhood to help his mother survive. He spoke about his dreams of having a good life, of building something meaningful, and of his deep love for Zainab. "I know I am not wealthy, sir," Jabari said, his voice steady now. "I know I cannot offer your daughter the comforts that you have worked so hard to provide. But I can offer her my honest work, my loyalty, and my promise that I will spend every day of my life trying to make her happy and to build a better life for us. I have saved these 200 shillings over 3 years, and I have brought these 3 goats as a bride price. It may not be much, but it is everything I have, and I give it freely to show you the seriousness of my intentions." Kofi listened without interrupting. When Jabari finished speaking, there was a long silence. Jabari's hope began to fade as he watched Kofi's face. Finally the older man spoke, and his words fell like stones into a still pond. "You're a good boy, Jabari. I have seen you work in the fields and I know your reputation is honest and true. Your mother is a respectable woman, and you come from good people. But you must understand, I have a daughter who is beautiful, intelligent, and well-educated. She has been raised in comfort and knows nothing of struggle. How can I give her to a man with nothing? What kind of father would I be if I allowed my daughter to marry poverty? I cannot accept your proposal. It is not because I disrespect you, but because I must think of my daughter's future and her happiness. She deserves a man who can provide for her in the way she has been accustomed to living." Jabari felt the words like physical blows. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. He began to collect his goats, but Kofi held up his hand. "Leave them," Kofi said. "Consider them a gift for your honesty and your courage. It took a brave man to come here today. I respect that even though I must refuse your request." Jabari left the goats. This small victory felt hollow now, and walked back through the village as darkness began to fall. He knew what he had to do next, but the thought filled him with dread. He had to hear Zainab's rejection from her own lips. The next morning he went to the well where Zainab came to draw water. When she saw him, her face turned red. She knew why he had come. Word traveled fast in the village. Zainab was kind-hearted, but she was also practical. She had been raised to think about status and comfort, about the kind of life a woman should have. "Jabari," she said softly, "I heard about your proposal to my father. I'm honored by your love, truly I am. But I cannot marry you. I cannot spend my life struggling, working in fields, living in a poor house. I deserve better. I deserve a man who can give me comfort and security. I deserve to live in a nice home and to have servants like my mother does. You are kind, but you have nothing to offer me. I am sorry, but my answer is no." Her words were kind, but they were also final. There was no anger in her voice, only certainty. This hurt Jabari even more than his father's rejection because it came from the person he loved most in the world. He wanted to argue, to explain that love was more important than money, that he would work hard and eventually they would have comfort together. But he could see in her eyes that her mind was made up. She had already decided that a poor life was not worth living even for love. That night, Jabari went to his mother's small house. She was sitting outside, stirring a pot of beans over the fire. When she saw his face, she knew what had happened. Jabari sat down beside her and spoke quietly, telling her everything. His proposal to Kofi, the rejection, his meeting with Zainab and her final answer. His mother listened without speaking. When he finished, she took his hand in hers. "My son," she said, "this is not the end of your story. This is only the beginning. You are young, you are strong, and you have a good heart. God has plans for you that are greater than this one girl. Go and make something of yourself. Go and show this village and this world what you are capable of becoming." Jabari looked at his mother's face, lined with age and hardship, but still full of hope. He made a decision in that moment. He would leave this village. He would work harder than he had ever worked before. He would build a life of success and meaning. And he would do it not to make Zainab regret her choice, but to honor his mother's faith in him and to prove to himself that he was worthy of something greater. That night, he packed a small bag with his few possessions, and as the sun rose over Mombasa village the next morning, Jabari walked away down the dusty road, leaving behind his old life and stepping toward an uncertain but determined future. He did not know then how far he would travel, how much he would achieve, or what his return would mean for everyone in the village. He only knew that he had to leave and that somehow, someday, he would prove that poverty was not a measure of a man's worth. Jabari arrived in the capital city on a Tuesday morning, carrying everything he owned in a single cloth bag. The city was nothing like Mombasa village. It was loud, chaotic, and overwhelming. Buildings stood so tall they seemed to touch the sky. Cars and buses filled the streets, honking their horns constantly. People rushed everywhere, speaking quickly, dressed in modern clothes, and moving with a sense of purpose that made Jabari feel very small and very out of place. He walked the streets for hours, asking anyone who would listen where he could find work. Most people ignored him, but eventually an old man sitting outside a shop told him about a construction site on the edge of the city where they were always looking for workers. Jabari made his way there before sunset, and by the next morning he had a job. The work was physically exhausting. Jabari carried heavy loads of cement, sand, and bricks from sunrise to sunset. His hands, already calloused from farm work, developed painful blisters that eventually turned into thick calluses. His back ached every night, and his muscles felt as though they were on fire. But Jabari did not complain. He arrived early every morning and stayed late every evening, doing more than what was expected of him. What made Jabari different from the other workers was not just his willingness to work hard, but his ability to observe and learn. While other men simply did their tasks and collected their pay, Jabari watched everything. He observed how the contractors planned the construction, how they managed the workers, how they solved problems when things went wrong. He listened to conversations about budgets, timelines, and material costs. He asked questions to anyone who would answer them, even when other workers mocked him for being so curious. After about 6 months of working as a laborer, a contractor named Hassan noticed the intelligent young man with the serious eyes and the hungry mind. Hassan had a reputation as a successful businessman who had built a large construction company from nothing. He had started poor, just like Jabari, and he recognized something in the young man that reminded him of himself. One day Hassan pulled Jabari aside and asked him if he would like to learn more than just how to carry heavy things. "I can teach you about business," Hassan said. "I can teach you how to manage money, how to buy materials at the right price, how to negotiate with customers, and how to run a successful company. But you must be willing to work twice as hard as you already do. You will work on the construction site during the day, and in the evenings, you will study and learn from me. Are you interested?" Jabari's answer was immediate. "Yes, sir. Yes, I am very interested." For the next several years, Jabari lived a life of intense hard work and constant learning. During the day he continued to work on the construction site, but now his responsibilities increased. Hassan gave him tasks that required thinking, not just strength. Jabari learned to calculate how much material was needed for a project. He learned to understand contracts and to spot problems before they became expensive mistakes. He traveled with Hassan to meet with customers, listening carefully to how Hassan spoke, how he listened to what people needed, and how he found solutions that made everyone happy. In the evenings, Jabari studied. Hassan had him read books about business, finance, and mathematics. There was much Jabari did not understand at first. His education had been limited in the village, but he was determined. He asked Hassan to explain things over and over until he understood them completely. Hassan was patient. He saw in Jabari the same hunger for knowledge and success that he himself had once felt. After 5 years of this intense apprenticeship, Jabari had learned enough to try his own business. Hassan helped him understand that he had enough savings to start something small. Together, they decided that Jabari would become a trader. He would buy goods in bulk from manufacturers, and then sell them to smaller shops and market vendors at a profit. Jabari's first business was very modest. He bought cloth, cooking spices, and simple tools. He set up a small stall in the main market of the city. The work was different from construction, but it required the same principles Hassan had taught him. Understanding what people needed, buying at the right price, treating customers fairly, and managing money wisely. At first, business was slow. Jabari barely made enough to cover his costs. But he did not give up. He traveled to different neighborhoods, talking to shopkeepers and market vendors, understanding what they needed and what prices they could afford. He began to develop relationships with his customers. People liked dealing with Jabari because he was honest. He never cheated them or sold them poor quality goods. If something was wrong with a product, he replaced it without argument. Slowly his business grew. Other traders began to respect him. Manufacturers wanted to sell to him because he paid on time and bought in large quantities. Shop owners wanted to buy from him because they knew they could trust him. Within 2 years, Jabari had expanded from a single stall to a small shop. Within 5 years he had established an import business, buying goods from other countries and selling them throughout the capital city. By the 8th year after he had left Mombasa village, Jabari was a successful businessman. He employed 15 people in his company. He had a small office with a desk and a telephone. He wore nice clothes, though he never forgot to dress modestly. He had a comfortable apartment where he lived alone, sending half of his earnings back to his mother in the village. His reputation in the business community was excellent. People called him the honest trader because he was known for fair dealing and keeping his promises. But while Jabari was building his success in the capital city, something very different was happening back in Mombasa village. Zainab's life had taken the path that her father had planned for her. About 2 years after Jabari left the village, a wealthy merchant named Darius had come to Kofi with a marriage proposal. Darius was from a respected family, he owned a large business, and he could provide Zainab with all the material comfort her father wanted for her. Zainab's wedding was the biggest celebration the village had seen in years. She wore a beautiful white dress that had been brought from the capital city. The celebration lasted 3 days with music and dancing and food. Everyone in the village attended. Zainab looked beautiful and on the surface, everything appeared to be perfect. But beneath the surface something was wrong. Darius was a cold man. He cared about his money and his business far more than he cared about his wife. He was rarely home. When he was home he barely spoke to Zainab. He gave her everything she had asked for, a beautiful house, servants, nice clothes, jewelry, but he gave her nothing that her heart actually needed. He did not give her love or attention or kindness or companionship. As the years passed, Zainab became increasingly unhappy. She had the comfortable life she had dreamed of, but she found that comfort was not enough. She was lonely. She missed genuine connection with another person. Late at night, when Darius was away on business trips, which was often, Zainab would sit alone in her beautiful house and think about the past. She thought about Jabari, the poor farmer's son who had looked at her with such love and devotion. She remembered how he had spoken to her at the well, how his voice had shaken slightly as he told her about his feelings. She remembered the sincerity in his eyes. And now, lying in a bed of expensive fabric in a beautiful house, she wondered what had become of him. Had he found another woman? Was he happy? Had he forgotten about her? The village gossip occasionally brought news of Jabari's success. Traveling merchants would mention that they had heard about a successful trader in the capital city who had come from Mombasa village. Some said he was wealthy now, that he had a successful business. But Zainab did not allow herself to believe it fully. She told herself that even if it were true, it was too late. She had made her choice and she had to live with it. Meanwhile, Jabari thought of Zainab sometimes too, but he had learned to transform his pain into purpose. Every time he felt the old hurt of rejection, he would push himself to work harder, to learn more, to achieve more. He told himself that success was not about proving her wrong. Success was about becoming the man he was meant to be, about honoring his mother's faith in him, and about creating opportunities for others who, like him, had started with nothing. He did not know it yet, but his journey was far from over. The most important chapter of his life was still to come. Jabari stepped out of the car that had brought him from the capital city, and his feet touched the red dust of Mombasa village for the first time in 8 years. The village looked exactly as he remembered it, The same cluster of houses, the same fields stretching toward the horizon, the same well in the center where women gathered to draw water. But Jabari himself was no longer the same person who had left this place with nothing but determination and heartbreak. He was dressed in simple but quality clothes, a plain white shirt and dark trousers. His shoes were well-made leather but not flashy. He carried a small bag and wore an expression of calm purpose rather than excitement. He had not come back to show off or to flaunt his wealth. He had come back because something in his heart had been calling him home. The first person to recognize him was old Mama Zuri, who sat outside her house selling vegetables. She had known Jabari since he was a child. Her eyes widened in surprise and then filled with tears of joy. "Jabari? Is it really you? Look at you. You have become a man." She called out to others, and within minutes, word had spread through the village that Jabari had returned. But Jabari did not stop to celebrate with the villagers. He had one person he needed to see first. He made his way to the small house on the edge of the village where his mother, Amina, lived. His heart beat faster with each step as he remembered his promise to her all those years ago. Amina was sitting outside her house, grinding grain with a large stone mortar. She was older now, her hair completely gray, her face lined with the years of hard work and worry. But when she looked up and saw her son walking toward her, her entire face transformed. She dropped the stone and stood up slowly, as if she could not quite believe what she was seeing. "Jabari?" she whispered, and then louder, "Jabari? My son. My son has come home." She ran to him, her old legs moving as fast as they could, and threw her arms around him. Jabari held his mother tightly, and both of them wept. For a long moment, neither of them could speak. Amina kept pulling back to look at her son's face as if to make sure this was real, and then holding him close again. "I told you," she said through her tears. "I told you that you would become someone great. Look at you. Look at what you have become. My son, my brilliant son." Jabari helped his mother sit down and they talked for hours. He told her everything about his journey, the difficult early days, meeting Hassan, learning business, building his company. He told her about the challenges he had faced and how he had thought of her courage many times when he wanted to give up. Amina listened with pride shining in her eyes. She told him about the village, about people he had known, about how his name had become known in the area as a success story. The next morning, Jabari sent word that he wished to meet with the village elders. This was important. In African tradition, major decisions and plans must be discussed with the elders, who are the wisdom keepers of the community. By evening, the 7 elders had gathered in the chief's house. They were curious about why this young man, who had left as a poor farmer's son, now wanted to meet with them. Chief Mwangi, the oldest and most respected of the elders, greeted Jabari with respect. "Welcome home, Jabari. We have heard stories about your success in the city. We are proud of you. Tell us, what brings you to speak with us?" Jabari stood respectfully before the elders. He was nervous, but his voice was steady. "Elders, thank you for welcoming me. I have returned to Mombasa village because this is my home, and because I have been blessed with success. I believe that when God blesses a person, that person has a responsibility to use those blessings to help others. I have come with a vision for our village and I wanted to share it with you and ask for your blessing." He paused and looked at each elder in turn. "I want to build a school for our children. Not just a simple building but a real school with trained teachers, desks, books and materials. I want our children to learn reading, mathematics, science, and skills that will help them succeed in the modern world. Right now, many of our children do not go to school because we cannot afford it, or because there is no school for them to attend." Chief Mwangi nodded thoughtfully. Another elder, Kofi, the same man who had rejected Jabari's proposal for his daughter, leaned forward with interest. Jabari continued, "I also want to build a medical clinic. Every year, mothers in our village lose children to sicknesses that could be prevented or treated. Women die giving birth to babies because there is no one to help them. I want to build a clinic where people can go when they are sick, where medicines are available, and where trained nurses and doctors can help us." The elders exchanged glances of amazement. This was much more than they had expected. "Third," Jabari said, "I want to build an irrigation system for our farmers. Our fields depend on rain, and when the rains are late or weak, our crops fail and our families go hungry. If we had irrigation, we could grow crops all year, and our farmers could have more stable income and better lives." He took a breath and made his final point. "And finally, I want to create a business fund. This fund will give loans to young people who want to start their own businesses but do not have money. I will teach them about business just as my mentor Hassan taught me. I will help them succeed not just for themselves, but so they can help their families and their village." There was a long silence in the room. Then Chief Mwangi stood up and placed his hand on Jabari's shoulder. Tears were in his eyes. "Jabari," he said slowly, "you have become a great man. Not because you have money but because you have a great heart. Not because you are wealthy, but because you understand that true wealth is using what you have to lift others up. We give you our blessing. We welcome your vision." One by one each elder stood and shook Jabari's hand. Even Kofi stood and embraced the young man he had once rejected, saying, "Forgive me, Jabari. I was wrong. I did not see your true value when you were young. You have become the man I should have recognized you could be." That evening, word spread through the village that Jabari had returned with a plan to change everything. People gathered outside his mother's house, wanting to see him, wanting to shake his hand, wanting to thank him. Some felt ashamed that they had once pitied him or laughed at his rejection. Others felt hope for the first time in many years, hope that their children might have better lives, that their village might become prosperous. Among the crowd that gathered, Zainab stood at a distance, watching. She saw Jabari greeting people with genuine warmth, saw how he treated the poorest person the same way he treated the richest, saw the light in his eyes that came from purpose and love for his community. She saw what she had lost, not just a man but a good man, a great man. And in that moment, standing in the shadows, she felt something break open inside her chest. Not happiness but recognition. Recognition of her own mistake, her own shallow thinking, her own misguided priorities. Jabari's return was not the return of someone seeking revenge or wanting to make others feel bad about how they had treated him. It was the return of someone who had found his true purpose, which was to serve and to lift others up. And that, more than any amount of wealth, was what made him truly great. The first building Jabari constructed was the school. He hired skilled workers and architects from the capital city to design a proper schoolhouse with solid concrete walls, large windows that let in light, and a roof that would not leak during the rainy season. The building was simple but beautiful, painted in bright colors that could be seen from far away. Inside there were 4 large classrooms, a small library with shelves of books, and an office for the teachers. Jabari traveled back to the capital city and personally interviewed teachers, offering them good salaries to come work in Mombasa village. He found 4 excellent teachers, 2 men and 2 women, who believed in education and wanted to make a difference in children's lives. He promised them housing, fair pay and respect. These teachers arrived in the village with excitement and dedication. On the day the school opened, the entire village gathered. Children who had never imagined they would go to school lined up at the gate. Parents who could not read themselves watched their children enter the building, their hearts full of hope. Jabari stood at the entrance, greeting each child personally, telling them, "Your education is important. You're important. Work hard and you will achieve great things." The school changed everything. Within the first year, over 100 children were attending classes regularly. They learned to read and write. They learned mathematics and science. They learned about geography and history. But more importantly, they learned to think critically and to dream about possibilities beyond their village. Jabari made sure that education was free for all children, rich and poor alike. He even provided notebooks, pencils, and uniforms for students whose families could not afford them. One of the first students to excel in the school was a girl named Kaysai, whose father was a poor farmer. Kaysai was brilliant and curious, asking questions constantly, writing stories, and solving mathematics problems faster than her classmates. Jabari noticed her potential and made sure she received extra attention and encouragement. One day, he told her, "You will do something great. Education is the key that will open doors you cannot yet imagine." While the school was being built and opened, Jabari also began work on the medical clinic. He found a piece of land near the center of the village and constructed a simple but functional building with 3 rooms, a waiting area, an examination room, and a small pharmacy. He hired a trained nurse named Ruth, who had studied in the capital city, to run the clinic. He also made arrangements with a doctor in the nearby town to visit the clinic twice a week to see patients who needed more specialized care. The clinic's opening brought tears to many people's eyes. For years, people in Mombasa village had suffered from illnesses with no one to help them. Mothers had died from complications during childbirth. Children had died from treatable diseases like malaria and typhoid fever. Elderly people had suffered from pain with no medicine to ease their suffering. Now there was hope. Ruth, the nurse, was dedicated and compassionate. She taught people about hygiene and prevention. She showed mothers how to take care of newborn babies. She treated infections and gave injections. She kept careful records of patients and their treatments. Within months, the clinic was saving lives. A mother named Adana gave birth to twins at the clinic, and both babies survived, something that would have been unlikely without proper medical care. She named one of the babies Jabari, in honor of the man who had made her survival possible. The third major project was the irrigation system. Jabari hired engineers to study the land and design a system that would bring water from a nearby river to the agricultural fields. The system included underground pipes, channels, and small pumps that could be operated by the farmers themselves. This was more complex than the school or the clinic, and it took almost a year to complete, but when it was finished, the results were remarkable. The farmers who had been struggling to grow enough food suddenly found that they could grow crops during the dry season as well as during the rainy season. They could grow more than they needed for themselves and sell the surplus in the market. Crop yields tripled, then quadrupled. A farmer who had once barely produced enough to feed his family could now earn enough money to send his children to school, to buy better tools, and to improve his home. One farmer named Kofi, not the wealthy merchant but a different Kofi, approached Jabari with tears in his eyes. "Brother," he said, "last year my family ate 1 meal a day because the harvest was so small. This year we eat 3 meals a day and we have money left over. We bought new clothes for our children. We fixed our roof. We can pay the school fees. You have given my family life." As the projects progressed, Jabari began his mentorship program for young people. He held classes in the evenings where he taught young men and women about business, finance, and entrepreneurship. He taught them how to identify opportunities, how to manage money, how to understand markets, and how to treat customers fairly. More importantly, he taught them that it was possible to succeed, that their circumstances at birth did not determine their future. Young people came from villages all around the region to learn from Jabari. He selected the most promising ones and gave them small loans from his business fund to start their own enterprises. A young man named Tun started a carpentry business. A young woman named Nia opened a small shop selling cloth and household goods. A boy named Amani raised chickens and sold eggs. Each of these young people succeeded because they had learned from Jabari and because they had money to invest in their dreams. As the village transformed, Jabari's reputation grew beyond Mombasa. People from other villages came to see what he had built. Government officials heard about the school and the clinic and came to observe them. Other wealthy business owners heard about his work and began to ask him for advice. Within 2 years, Jabari had become known throughout the entire region as a visionary leader and a generous benefactor. But amid all this success and transformation, there was one person who felt the weight of regret more than anyone else: Zainab. She watched from her beautiful house as her village transformed. She saw the school being built and watched as children began to attend. She heard about the clinic and imagined the lives being saved. She observed the irrigation systems being installed and saw the farmers' lives improve dramatically. And she saw Jabari at the center of it all, working tirelessly, treating everyone with respect and kindness, his face lit up with purpose and joy. She realized with crushing clarity that she had rejected not just a poor man but a great man. She had chosen comfort over character, money over meaning, and she had lost everything that actually mattered. Her marriage to Darius remained cold and empty. He did not even seem to notice the transformation happening in the village. He was away most of the time, focused on his business dealings in the city. When he was home, he barely spoke to Zainab. She lived in a beautiful house but felt like a prisoner in it. One day, Zainab walked to the new school and stood outside, watching children laugh and learn. She saw Jabari speaking with the teachers, asking about each child's progress, genuinely interested in their development. A small girl ran up to him and he picked her up, laughing, asking her what she had learned that day. The girl told him excitedly about a story she had read, and Jabari listened as if she were the most important person in the world. Zainab felt tears stream down her face. This was the man she had rejected. This was the man she had told was not good enough for her. And now she could see clearly what she had not been able to see before, that true greatness was not measured in houses or servants or expensive clothes. True greatness was measured in how a person used their gifts to serve others, in how they treated people, in the positive change they brought to the world. The village had transformed completely. Children who had never gone to school were now learning to read and write. Farmers who had struggled to survive now had stable incomes and hope for their children's futures. Sick people were being treated and cured instead of dying from preventable diseases. Young people had role models and opportunities. And at the heart of all this transformation was Jabari, a man who had been rejected for being too poor, but who had become rich in all the ways that truly mattered. The village elders decided to hold a grand celebration to honor Jabari and to officially recognize his contributions to Mombasa village. They chose a Saturday in the dry season, a day when the weather would be perfect and when people from neighboring villages could also attend. For weeks people prepared. Women made food, rice, beans, vegetables, and meat prepared in traditional ways. Men decorated the village square with colorful cloths and flowers. Musicians practiced songs of celebration and gratitude. When the day arrived, the sun rose bright and clear over Mombasa village. By mid-morning, hundreds of people had gathered in the village square. There were people from Mombasa village itself, but also people from villages all around. Farmers, traders, teachers, and students who had heard about Jabari's work and wanted to witness this celebration. Chief Mwangi stood and called for silence. He spoke about how Jabari had left the village as a poor young man with a broken heart. He spoke about how Jabari had worked hard and achieved success. But most importantly, he spoke about how Jabari had chosen to use his success to help others. This man, Chief Mwangi said, pointing to Jabari, could have stayed in the city enjoying his wealth. But he came back to serve us. He built a school so our children could learn. He built a clinic so we could be healthy. He built an irrigation system so we could prosper. He did this not because he had to, but because he loves us. This is the mark of true greatness. Then the elders and the people of the village began to approach Jabari one by one. But something unexpected happened. As they came before him, they did not simply shake his hand or offer words of thanks. Instead, they knelt down on one knee before him. It was not a gesture of servitude or worship, but a gesture of profound respect and honor. In the African tradition, kneeling before someone meant recognizing their wisdom, their integrity, and their service to the community. The first to kneel was Chief Mwangi himself. This was significant because the chief rarely knelt before anyone. He placed one knee on the ground and bowed his head slightly. "Thank you, Jabari," he said. "You have brought honor and prosperity to our village. You have shown us what is possible when one person decides to serve others with their whole heart." Then came the teachers from the school. They knelt and spoke of how Jabari had given them opportunity to do meaningful work. One teacher, Mr. Kipchoge, said, "Because of you, I have the honor of teaching children who will become leaders and doctors and engineers. You have given me the chance to shape the future." Ruth, the nurse from the clinic, knelt with tears streaming down her face. "Every life we save at the clinic is because of you, Jabari. Every mother who survives childbirth, every child who recovers from illness, these are your gifts to our village." The farmers came, one after another, and knelt before Jabari. An old farmer named Samuel knelt slowly, his body stiff with age, and said, "I thought I would die poor and struggling. Because of the irrigation system you built, I have lived to see my grandchildren go to school. I have lived to see my family have enough to eat and clothes to wear. You have given me dignity." Young people knelt before him, the ones he had mentored and given loans to help them start businesses. Tund, the carpenter, knelt and said, "I was a young man with no hope and no direction. You believed in me when I did not believe in myself. Now I have my own business, I am respected, and I am building a future. Thank you for seeing my potential." Kasai, the brilliant young girl he had encouraged at school, knelt and spoke in a clear voice. "Mr. Jabari, because of your school and your encouragement, I now dream of becoming a teacher myself. I want to help other children the way you have helped me. You have changed the direction of my entire life." Mothers knelt and thanked him for the lives of their children saved at the clinic. Children from the school lined up and knelt, some shyly, some with big smiles, all wanting to show their gratitude to the man who had opened their minds to learning. But then came the moment that shook everyone present. Amina, Jabari's mother, came forward. She was an old woman now, her body bent with age and years of hard work. She moved slowly, supported by another woman. When she reached Jabari, she began to kneel, but Jabari quickly moved forward and caught her, preventing her from kneeling. "Mother, no," he said softly. "You should never kneel before me. It is I who should kneel before you." And then, to the shock and amazement of everyone present, Jabari knelt before his mother. He took her hands in his and looked up at her with love and gratitude shining in his eyes. "Mother," he said, "you taught me to dream. You believed in me when I had nothing. You told me that I could become something great. Everything I am, everything I have done, is because of your faith in me. Thank you for being my mother." Amina wept openly, her whole body shaking with emotion. She pulled her son up and held him tightly, whispering words of love and pride that only he could hear. The entire village watched this moment between mother and son, and many people cried, moved by the depth of love and gratitude between them. As Jabari helped each person up from their kneel, he did something remarkable. He did not simply pull them to their feet and move on. Instead, he embraced each person. He looked them in the eye. He spoke words of gratitude back to them, acknowledging their hard work, their character, their importance to the community. To the teachers he said, "You are the real heroes. You are shaping the minds of our children." To the nurse he said, "Your compassion and dedication save lives every day." To the farmers he said, "Your hard work feeds our village. You are the foundation of everything." With each embrace, Jabari demonstrated a fundamental truth, that true greatness is not about being above others or having others serve you. True greatness is about lifting others up, recognizing their value and serving them with humility and love. When Zainab's turn came to approach, she walked slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. She was terrified. She did not know if Jabari would even acknowledge her, given how she had rejected him all those years ago. When she reached him, she could not bring herself to kneel. Instead, she stood with her head bowed, unable to meet his eyes. Jabari looked at her with kindness and no trace of bitterness or resentment. He gently lifted her chin so she had to meet his gaze. "Hello, Zainab," he said simply. "Thank you for coming to the celebration." "Jabari," she said, her voice shaking, "I am so sorry. I was foolish and shallow. I rejected you because I valued comfort over character. I have spent these years regretting my choice every single day. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything." Jabari took her hands. "Zainab, I do not hold anger toward you. That pain I felt when you rejected me, it became the fuel that drove me to succeed. It taught me that I had to build my life for myself, not for anyone else. In a way, your rejection was a gift. It helped me become who I was meant to be. I forgive you completely and I wish you happiness." He embraced her, and Zainab felt something in her chest finally break open, not in pain but in release. She had carried this burden of regret for so long, and now, feeling Jabari's genuine forgiveness and compassion, she felt it lift. After the individual recognitions, Chief Mwangi asked Jabari to speak to the gathered crowd. Jabari stood before hundreds of people, villagers, visitors, young and old, rich and poor. His expression was calm and thoughtful. He did not look like a man who had triumphed over his enemies or proved his doubters wrong. He looked like a man at peace with himself and his purpose. "People of Mombasa village," he began, "and visitors from our neighboring villages, I want to share something with you. When I left this village 8 years ago, I was hurt and ashamed. I felt that I was not good enough, that my poverty defined me. But my mother told me something that changed my life. She said, 'Your worth is not determined by what you have, but by who you are.'" He paused, letting those words sink in. "I worked hard in the city not to make money, but to prove to myself that I was capable of creating something meaningful. And then, I realized that success meant nothing if I could not use it to help others. I came home not to show off or to make anyone feel bad. I came home because I remembered that this village, these people, raised me. This is where I come from. This is my family." Jabari gestured toward the school, the clinic, and the irrigation channels that could be seen from where they stood. "These buildings and systems are not monuments to me. They are monuments to what we can achieve when we work together, when we believe in each other, and when we refuse to accept that our circumstances define our destiny. Every child in that school is proof that education can change a life. Every person healed in that clinic is proof that we can care for each other. Every farmer with a better harvest is proof that we can prosper together." He looked directly at the young people in the crowd. "To you I say this. Do not let anyone tell you that you cannot achieve your dreams because of where you were born or what your family has. Do not let poverty or rejection or failure define you. Use these things as fuel for your determination. Work hard, stay honest, treat people fairly, and never forget where you come from. When you succeed, come back and help others succeed. This is how we build a better world." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers. As the sun began to set over Mombasa village, casting long shadows and painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, people gathered to eat the food that had been prepared. They shared stories and laughter. Music played and people danced. Jabari sat with his mother, his arm around her shoulders. Amina looked at her son with eyes full of pride and love. "I always knew," she said softly, "that you would do something great. Not because of what you would achieve but because of who you are inside. I am so proud of you, my son." Jabari squeezed his mother's hand. "I could not have done any of this without you, mother. You gave me the most important thing, you taught me to believe in myself. That is worth more than all the money in the world." As the celebration continued into the night, the message was clear to everyone who witnessed it. True greatness was not about wealth or power or making others bow before you. True greatness was about service, about lifting others up, about using whatever gifts you have been given to make the world better. Jabari had not only transformed Mombasa village, he had transformed the hearts and minds of everyone in it, showing them what was possible when one person decides to serve their community with their whole heart and soul.